Okay, so, Ms. Rosen.
Yes.
So far, okay, we've had a conversation with a U.S. commercial officer. We also had a conversation with a legal expert. Now, we're going to talk about everybody's favorite subject. Where is the money? Okay, show me the money. We have an expert with 24 years of commercial banking experience. And not only that, I would be remiss if I didn't say a special thank you to Davy. She didn't just come here. She, when I told her about the idea, an hour later she had a script for me with all kinds of ideas. So she's that type of a person. Take charge and run with the ball. So on that note, Davy, please have a conversation with Ms. Rosen about her business and how she can do different things.
Well, good afternoon.
Hello,
Davy
how are
Chirpellis
you?
with
Good to meet
Citibank.
you.
I like to role play this out really, truly, how this is going
Absolutely.
to work. So, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule, and especially thanks to SBDC for bringing us in to help educate you on the things you're going to need to do to execute on your business plan, which is exporting. And Pierre's taken some time already to tell me about your business, so we don't have to spend a lot of time
Yes.
repeating yourself. I'm sure you're getting tired of doing that.
Absolutely.
Right?
No,
So
not really,
when
but-
resources bring us in, they fill us in as much as they can within your permission. And then we can kind of fast forward to the things that we can do in respect of what you're trying to accomplish to help you get there.
Right.
Okay? So right now, I'm sure your head is spinning with a lot of information, right? And you really want to focus on the finish line. How do I get there? So what couple things that I might not have enough data on to help me help you,
Okay.
I'd like to talk about today, which is your finances. And we haven't seen any financial statements yet. I haven't seen an aging of receivables yet. I heard a little bit about some clients you have. I'm guessing those are good credits. But I'm going to ask you a little bit about the financial tools that you've used to date to manage your business, so that we know what you know how to use and what
Okay.
you're familiar with, so that I
Okay.
can fill in those blanks.
All right.
So, do you have a line of credit now?
Yes, I do have a line of credit.
Okay. And I think you mentioned you're working with a community bank. And typically a community bank, which is a great bank partner for companies that do regional and domestic business, is not necessarily the right partner for an international business. Okay? And as you heard, I'm at Citibank. Citibank is in 140 plus countries around the globe. That means we have physical presence, bricks and mortar employees who speak the languages, know the culture, have local clients and relationships. And when you're going into other countries and you're identifying a bank partner, it's critical to you that you work with the company, the bank, and the banker who has the expertise in the products and financial tools you need, has the physical presence and knows those countries and can add value by meeting with you in those countries, introducing you to manufacturers, vendors, maybe clients, getting you involved in complement to the SBDC, in complement to the governmental agencies, and we can all work together
So
to
you
bring
may even
different
be able to introduce me to potential customers.
and help you screen clients and help you screen vendors.
Okay.
So that's really a value add to our clients. So now that I know you have a line of credit, I know you're credit worthy, I know you have time in business, and you have financials to support, right? I know you've been in a domestic business, so now it's what might you need. Have you ever used trade credit before?
No, never.
Okay. Do your vendors, any vendors that you have, 'cause I know you're a manufacturer, but you still have vendors you buy your raw materials from.
Yes.
Do they offer you credit terms?
Yes, they do.
Okay. So about 45, 60 days. And
Yes.
let's just stretch
Yes.
your credit and cash flow a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yes,
when
that's
you
true.
go in overseas, if you haven't thought about this yet, those vendors don't know you, and they're not going to want to extend that credit to you, okay? So there's financial tools available to you, okay, if you qualify for them, we'll talk about that you can utilize to earn the trust and to help you stretch your cash flow through the cycle,
Like
okay?
letters of credit, you mean?
Letters of
Okay.
credit, right? So as you go through your export process and you get these hopefully very large purchase orders, you might need more money that you have on hand to buy your raw goods, you might need greater credit terms, you might be looking into importing and then exporting, right?
Yes.
You might find a cheap way to get some of your raw goods overseas to create your products.
Mhm.
All these things are gonna come into play as you do your diligence.
Right.
So we can help with working with and explaining what type of trade credit you can use, which are letters of credit, and there's different types, which we won't go into today. But knowing that you need to understand what vendors will take from you to help give you longer terms, to help them feel secure and mitigate their risks, and how that helps you with your cash flow will become critical. And I did take the opportunity to bring some information you could take home with you. So you don't have to take a lot of notes,
Okay, good.
and you don't have to digest a lot of this. And you can go home and study this, and then we can talk more intelligently next time about what you need
Thank
and
you.
why. We could also think about foreign exchange. Now, this usually comes into play when you're working with other countries in larger dollar amounts, and you want to have the opportunity to have the greatest margin you can. And often what we notice at Citibank is that companies, both small and large, tend to work in US dollars. That's not always to their benefit, okay? Because there might be an opportunity to bill your client, and I heard Panama and Colombia, in their form of currency,
Yes.
and actually improve your margins.
Mhm.
So again, these is all food for thought today. We're not gonna dig into nitty, but these are the things I want you to be thinking about when you're going to market, about the best margin you can get, the risk mitigation and currency exchange. You wanna put that risk on them, or do you wanna take it? Is there an upside in doing so and going through that exercise? What kind of trade credit you can get out of your vendors? What kind of credit do you want to extend to your clients overseas who are going to want terms from you, and can you afford to give them those terms? Maybe you want to think about requiring them to give you letters of credit,
Yes.
okay, which we can process and clear for you and credit your account if they don't pay on time. That ensures you get paid.
Right.
So as Tanya, who I know you met with earlier, would educate you about, she would say, you have to be careful who you work with overseas. That's what they help you with. Is this a company, a valid company? Do they have the wherewithal to pay you? Do you want to sell them your products? This is really important, because a sale is only a good sale if you can get paid, and it's more important to get paid timely, because otherwise you become a bank. We don't want you to be a bank, right? We're a bank. So these are the things that we're gonna help you determine and work together to understand all your financial tools and how to talk to your vendors, how to talk to your clients, how to ask the right questions, and figure out negotiating the terms with them on both sides to help your cash flow cycle. And that's what we do all day long, and complement SBDC about educating you and being your advisor. Okay, and there's no cost to Citibank for that. So you really should use us as much as you can. It's in respect of financing, assuming that you're gonna not have a situation where you're doing cash on demand, you're gonna need to provide credit terms to companies, as we talked about, to buy your product, just like your vendors give you credit terms. That means you're gonna be waiting for your money. So your margins, or I believe they're in the 30% range.
That's true.
Okay, and then you have your cost of your goods, that's gonna come out of pocket, your labor, your overhead. How are you gonna support this with growth? So companies always say, I want the sales, and then they don't know what to do with them. How are they gonna buy their product? How are they gonna manufacture a product? How are they gonna afford to ship their product? Which I know that later on, Arnie's coming in to talk to you about that.
Yes.
Everything has a cost, and it's cash flow cycle that matters. So there's some programs out there that the government supports, because the government, as you might have listened to Obama speak over and over again, wants us to help companies export.
Right.
There's some government programs through the Small Business Administration and the EXIM Bank, which is the Export-Import Bank of the U.S. that Citibank offers. Not all banks offer these programs. And furthermore, Citibank is a delegated lender. What's that mean? Well, that means the government's giving us approval without their oversight to provide these products to you, to vet you as a client and a borrower, and to close the deal, and thereafter send them the documentations and copy. Now, what does that do for you? Because the SBA has a program called the Working Capital Guarantee Program, and the XM is similar program, they allow us to finance foreign receivables. So what does that mean? If you give a vendor overseas in another country the 60 days or 90 days to pay you, we can advance on those receivables so you have working capital to manage your cash flow cycle till they pay. And the reason we do this and we're so comfortable because conventional lines of credit don't finance foreign receivables.
They do if they're credit insured.
They do, right,
If
but
they're
we're
not
talking about no credit
insured,
insurance.
They will not allow for financing those foreign AR.
Thank you, John. So, and that's my colleague,
Okay.
okay, for the audience. So without credit insurance, we didn't go into that yet. Generally, domestic lines of credit do not finance foreign receivables, too risky. But with the government's programs and support, they're giving us that guarantee to backstop events of default. That means that they make us feel confident
Right.
that we can do that, offer that type of financing. And there's some uniqueness to the terms you get on this financing as well, that longer terms to get paid while still borrowing against those receivables because they understand the nature and the timeline of export, okay?
Right.
So we have some information here on these products that you can dig into. And it's real important you understand the differential between the two products. They have 90% similarity and 10% difference. Well, the 10% is the real important part, so that you know if either program is, you qualify for it, or both. They have different costs, they have similar structures. One allows you to finance sales to the military, and one doesn't. If you're selling to the military, you need to know that right away. One program does not work, and the other does. Also, one requires 51% or more U.S. content.
Yes.
I think Tanya might have mentioned that earlier to you to work with her. So one of the programs allows for that also, the other doesn't have that requirement. One requires credit insurance, another one doesn't. So these are things you need to talk to an expert about the two programs and figure out which program or do both work for you. And let's say you have the Liability either or, what's the better financing option in respective costs? Timelines, what do you need to do? So these things help you with the cash flow cycle. They help you with implementation of exporting. They help you with your financing. And they help you to work with these vendors who may need the terms that you can't afford to give them without financing. So with that, I'd love to leave you with a lot of information. I'd love to leave you with my card, and I hope that you'll want to meet again. Thank you so much. Thanks, Ronnie.
Okay, so now you've got cash to burn, right?
Oh. Thank you.
You still need to get the goods from here to there. And this is what the freight forwarding is all about. To speak to you about that, Ronnie,
Yes.
is Arnold.
And so welcome to the wonderful world of exporting.
Thank you.
You and your company, Kids for Sports.
Yes.
And I see that you've had the fine opportunity of meeting supply chain partners here that, as I was saying before, usually to meet such qualified people, an exporter's got to search and meet and interview in order to put a team like that together.
Right.
And success in exporting is in yourself and in the team that you have. So now that you know step 1, step 2, step 3, and step 4, you're ready to export, right?
I hope so.
Okay. And you've got clients.
You're the missing puzzle piece.
I'm the missing link.
Yes.
When I had a full beard, I was really the missing link. So now you're ready to export. So let me ask you, Ronnie, do you have clients ready to purchase your products in Panama?
Yes, I do. I have
Okay.
that part all set up.
And have they made inquiries to you yet about what it's going to cost them to buy the products from you? Not only the cost of the products, but to ship it from?
No, not entirely. That's what I'm hoping you'll be able to share with me.
Okay, well, quite likely what's going to start to happen as you start to answer the inquiries and potential orders for export is your potential buyers overseas are going to say to you, please give me a pro forma invoice and a CIF or a C&I or an FAS freight quote.
Okay.
And basically what that means is they want you to tell them what the cost of your goods is that you're selling them, what the cost of trucking to the piers of the airports in the U.S. is, what the freight forwarding fees will be, what the cost of ocean or air freight will be for the particular shipment based on size and weight, and what those charges add up to comprise the quote to them, so that they can start to determine if your product, not only the price of the product, but all the shipping costs are feasible for their purchase of your product.
Understood.
So, are you familiar with those terms so far?
No, I'm not familiar with those
Okay.
terms.
Would it be helpful to you to have a service partner at your side, such as a
Absolutely.
freight forwarder?
It would be necessary.
Okay. And so, let me ask you this, what information would you like to know today about the freight forwarder's role before I just give a patent definition?
I think I need to know how my product gets from once my product arrives at my distribution center, how does it get from there to the customer?
Okay, when you say...
In Panama or Colombia, for example.
Okay, you're talking distribution center in Colombia or Panama?
Well, from my distribution center here in the
Okay.
US to their
Okay.
warehousing.
Very well. Hypothetically speaking, you've shown your goods at a trade show, or you've demonstrated them through the U.S. Commercial Service, or through any other conduits by which potential clients have seen your company name, seen your products, and now they want to perhaps buy a sample from you,
Yes.
or they want to place an order from you, and you now have to make arrangements to move
Yeah,
it.
they've come to a trade show here in
Right.
the US and seen them there, and now we're trying to do business.
And so they asked you for a quotation on...
Yes.
Okay. Have they asked you to quote them freight costs and methods of shipping?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, so at that stage, what a freight forwarder will do for you is to come at your side and work to provide the information to you with regards to the cost to move it from your distribution center. If it's going ocean freight, to the piers for export. If it's air, the airports for export. They're going to talk to you about what export documentation is required from you as the exporter of record, commercial invoices, packing lists, certificates of origin, and other documents that vary based on country of destination. And the freight forwarder is going to ask you, what is the size of your shipment? How many cartons do you have? What are the dimensions of the cartons, the gross packed weights? What is that product? Where is it going to? And the freight forwarder is going to put together pricing information on the basis of size and weight of the shipment. In the shipping industry, particularly international shipping, freight costs are computed on the basis of weight or measure. So you could have a cup that is empty and weighs a few ounces, or you could have a cup that's full of lead and weighs a few pounds. So in our industry, what happens is you take the dimensions and you cube it out, or you take the gross weight, and whichever is greater dictates what the weight of the shipment is on weight or measure, and that's applied to a freight rate. Now, that ocean or air freight rate is based on what your product is, where it's going in the world, can be affected by season and time of year. But in short, what happens is the forwarder will take your shipment sizes and dimensions, determine if it's going to be a loose freight shipment, meaning less than a full container,
Yes.
or if you have enough for a full container shipment.
So you arrange for the shared container thing too?
We can move your cargo in a shared container.
Okay.
We can move it in a full container of your own product if you have sufficient amount to fill it. And we then compute the freight rates, the cost of the actual international ocean or air freight on the basis of weight and measure. We put that together with the cost of trucking to the pier or airport. We put that together with the freight forwarding fees for the preparation of export documents, which the freight forwarder makes for you, which include but not limited to airway bills, ocean bills of lading, export decks, certificates of origin, etc., necessary and required by the U.S. government to enable you to export a shipment. We put that together with the international cost of ocean or air freight. We add that all up together, and generally you have your cost of goods sold on that shipment from your door, your distribution point, to the overseas port or airport.
And then when it gets to the port, what happens from there?
That's a good question. Now, dependent upon the client and the relationship, the client might say to you, we just want you to give us the shipment from your doors to our port or airport in Panama or Colombia. We have our own customs broker in Colombia or Panama. We'll arrange the customs clearance and pickup and delivery in our country ourselves. Other clients might say to you, we want you to arrange for the shipment to move from your distribution point through our ports and airports, through customs, picked up and delivered to our distribution point. We want you to give us what's called a door-to-door.
Is it insured all the way, whether I use one service or the other at the other end?
It's advisable to take insurance on your export shipments, and it's advisable that you take what's called an all-risk warehouse-to-warehouse policy, which is different than domestic insurance, and may be different than the riders that your domestic insurance company may take out on your corporate policy. An all-risk warehouse policy will cover your shipment. There are exclusions from your distribution point to your client's receiving point.
Okay.
What other
Sounds
questions do you
great.
have?
I can't think, I think you've covered everything. I think you've covered
Well,
everything.
I'd like to
Yes.
comment that, power is in the team you assemble. It's in you and the team of supply chain partners. You have the special honor of meeting some very professional people here today. And for those that are exporting or interested in exporting, to have a team such as you have here today in these different functions at your side will certainly assure you of understanding what's required of you, getting the job done, and being successful at exporting and expanding your business through export.
Really been terrific. Thank you very much. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Okay, take a whole 1 minute and 15 seconds.
Brody, would you mind getting the lights for me? Thank you, sir.
The world was once one landmass where everyone was connected without borders. Today, we're separated by oceans and divided by languages, customs, and more. While most businesses can learn fundamental cultural differences, the question is, can your company effectively overcome cultural obstacles to optimize operational efficiency, improve communication, and drive profit across cultures? Around the block or around the globe, international business requires an in-depth understanding of how global stakeholders do business. The costs of getting it wrong are substantial when you fail to train your sales staff to understand local buyer motivations, develop and maintain strong relationships with coworkers, colleagues, and clients in other cultures, and adapt global marketing campaigns to be effective in multiple cultures. Instead, transform regional challenges into competitive advantages by leveraging the power of culture to optimize your bottom line.
Okay, this is a brief introduction to cultural communications. And if you going overseas to sell and you kind of miss the cultural part, you're pretty much dead in the waters. Here's what you are able to see when you're talking to your clients. Body language maybe, tonality, words, gestures, and you can infer from those, like what the person feels about your product and everything. Here is what you're not seeing, and which is even worse, that you can't do anything about. This is the iceberg. Beliefs, values, biases, prejudices, experiences, fears, dreams, feelings. But you at least ought to be aware of that this is out there. Cultural sensitivity is not just something that's politically correct. It will sink your sale. I mean, that's for sure. So there's a business reason to be culturally sensitive. On that note,
Use your example.
Yes.
Like you always use your example with if somebody does this. It could be-
Absolutely,
For
absolutely.
ex- Just use that as an
Absolutely.
example.
All right, so let's just do it.
Sure.
Okay, you asked for it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
I hope it works.
yeah, it
Okay.
will.
So, in the US, okay, Americans, we're Americans, okay? And we like that kind of stuff. And we've signed a deal,
Ready to go?
okay? We do the handshake, and we do the, hey, man, great stuff. And I say, hey.
That's right, excellent.
I said that. I said that. Hey, okay, all right? We're still good. All right, we're still friends at this point. But we've traveled to Brazil. Okay, now we're in Brazil. Okay, we signed the contract. Hey, okay, pal, Brazil, everything, right? And I said this. I just said a terrible thing to the man. You know, at this point, he's upset. How can I go to his own office and insult him like this? And I thought I was being cool. A-okay, right? It's cultural sensitivity. I mean, we think of it as political correctness and whatever, the soft stuff, but it works. Even if he didn't tear it in front of me, right? When he went back to the office, things might have changed all of a sudden, and you don't know what you did. You don't know why it happened. But so just be culturally sensitive to other people's feelings, their culture, and everything else. Here are some resources that you will find in the sheet that you have. These are resources, places on the internet that, and this is the export.gov that Tanya was talking about, and a whole host of other sites that will keep you informed and where you can learn some more. Now, having said that, okay, if you plan to export, we are here to help you to succeed. This is our entire staff, and of course, he's not in the picture, but I wanted to say a special thank you to Dan for a job well done. Okay, so now we'll if you can indulge us with a few minutes, we'll let you ask a couple of questions since we have gone over time. And you're the first question.
For how long you can patent something?
It's 20 years from the filing date. The government will give you the monopoly for 20 years by disclosing your invention. That's the exchange between you and the patent office. So once the 20 years is up, you cannot renew it. With the trademarks, however, you can keep renewing those forever.
So you suggest, let's say, doing business with, let's say, Canada. Would you, before you did business with them, would you register your trademark there first and get that out of the way? Or is that something really that's common business practice?
It is common, yes, I would recommend registering there. I don't believe Canada is a first to file system because they have a use system kind of like ours is, but it is recommended that you file.
Any other questions?
Is there any fees to maintain the patent during these 20 years?
Yes.
How much
In
it
the
is?
United States, yes, and as well in other countries.
How much it is roughly?
I'm not sure, but you have to pay them at 3.5 years, 7.5 years, and 11.5 years. And they get progressively higher each time. It can be very expensive to maintain.
Okay.
So if at 11.5 years, you've decided that you're really not commercially, successful anymore with the product, you may just let it die.
I had companies do patents for me, and they usually, with the business people, such as myself, went through and said, do you want certain countries? Think very carefully, because it was a huge cost of business. They would do it. We would focus on the United States, and then, being very selective, we would choose certain countries. Certain countries are a lot less expensive than other countries, but then that corresponds probably to the opportunities in those different markets. So you have to be very judicious, particularly if you're running your own small business, because it can add up very quickly.
Yes.
But I do believe that the United States was probably the most costly in general. But if you're in the U.S. market, yeah, but, so you gotta balance your whole business needs.
Outside the U.S., however, most countries require yearly maintenance fees.
Correct.
Whereas
Absolutely.
ours are a little separate, separated out.
Right, but it's very variable all over the map.
Next question.
I'm working with the New York congressional and senatorial members on exploring the possibility of criminal liabilities for patent infringement because small business cannot afford to defend patent infringement. It's an interesting case. We're always looking for people's input into it. There are pros, there are cons, but the fact of the matter is the small business in this country cannot afford to go against patent infringement, cost of which is incredible. And as a result of which, so many small companies have their patent rights trampled and can do nothing about it. It's a difficult question, but we're working on it.
Everything that I heard today had to do with manufacturing a product, but we export commodities, paper, metal, plastics. Would everything that you guys spoke about today pertain to me?
Sure.
Services as well, and some of the financing vehicles available, same rules as a legal entity, the same protective rights if you had a trademark as a service provider, still apply to you, no matter what it is that you're selling.
Sure.
We've all heard stories of certain Asian companies that traditionally trample intellectual property rights. Just how enforceable are these? I mean, is it really a practicable approach for small businesses?
It's getting better. It's still really tough to enforce, especially in Asian countries.
We have 60% of our, I didn't talk about advocacy. We have an advocacy group, and one of the things that they do is where if they feel like people have infringed on patent rights or trademarks, particularly in China, I'm just bringing, it's one of our top countries where we have 60% of our resources of advocacy sitting in that country. We have advocacy and also market access and compliance and our standards people. And that has to do with infringements, IPR issues, intellectual property rights issues. So there's a group there trying, but it's tough.
Another thing you can do is you can register your patents and trademarks with U.S. Customs, so you can help at least stop and get goods seized at the borders that are coming in to the U.S.
There is that stopfakes.gov, it's a website, and there's a 1-800 number also. And I remember when I was in Colombia, they actually would go into the shopping malls and they would look for fakes or, infringements, and they would just pull them, and that's the other benefit. Remember we talked about free trade agreement markets, because there is the mechanism, the legal mechanism to pool, counterfeits, and also at the customs as well. But again, it's not necessarily 100% enforceable.
I'd like to add to that, to back up what the girls are saying. As a freight forwarder customs broker, we had a new client that was bringing in a container load of what they called women's blouses from an Asian country. And they gave us the commercial invoice from the supplier in the Asian country and the packing list and declared it as women's blouses. And we went ahead as the customs broker and prepared all the import customs clearance documents, submitted them to U.S. Customs. The container is being cleared, and if you don't realize this, Customs has the opportunity to random inspect any shipment at any time. And they inspected this particular container load, and lo and behold, what was inside but knockoff Nike sneakers. So they seized that container. They constantly on this site never saw the products. As a customs broker, we weren't at fault because we don't see the product nor do we load it, but it's a problem.
I work in a company from Nicaragua. The question is, who is giving instructions to him with the container taken to Honduras, Puerto Cortes? They bring back to Newark, New Jersey. The FDA give it to you order or instruction, you send it to Virginia for inspection, or they do you say, or I don't know who is giving instruction to the owner, to the company, shipping company.
You're talking about import of product subject to FDA approval?
Food, dry food, bean, red bean.
Yeah, shipment from Nicaragua to the United States of dried beans subject to FDA approval.
And so Nicaragua send it to the Honduras, Puerto Cortes. Puerto Cortes send it to me, to Newark, New Jersey.
So, okay, inter-country shipment and then ultimately to the U.S., right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the FDA certifications have to be in place with your supplier overseas, and you have to have FDA certification here, and the instructions for shipping, actually making the shipment, come from you to the freight forwarder to bring the product from the foreign country to the USA. Did I answer that okay
Yeah.
for you?
Yeah, that's fine.
Any other questions?
Let's say I got the patent for this. She also wants to get the same, import the same things. Can she do it, or I had the right?
You have the right to exclude
Oh,
for the same
You
product.
would
Yeah,
get another
but
pro-
no, I think,
another
I think,
product.
No,
I
no,
think,
she
I think
didn't make
she's,
that product.
she's talking about the exclusive rights of distribution.
Distribution
Yeah.
rights,
Yeah.
that's
It's a
very
distribution
different.
right, that's very different.
Yeah, that's very different, that's with the distributor. I mean, I don't do the importing in, but I understand it when you're going in the other direction. And that's something you would make the agreement with the person that you're buying those bags from. And it's very rare that a company will give full exclusive distribution rights into a market, especially a market like New York. I'm just being, because this is real. Yeah, that's very rare that they would do that. In some cases, they might because they're a startup company and they just don't know better. But you can bet after you start selling that product and then someone else approaches them, they're gonna try to break that contract with you, or they won't honor it, and the likelihood that you're gonna get a lawyer to go in there and sue them over it, it's gonna be tough, yeah. It's a lot, it would be a lot of money, and then you've already damaged the relationship with them already, so.
One thing I'd like to comment on also, in just respect of the law, and I'm not a lawyer, but I always advise my clients, outside of just thinking about patents and copyrights, trademarks, and intellectual property, when you're going into other countries, you have to think in respect to law and consulting your attorneys about legal issues and just what type of entity you are, how you're filed, the ownership structure, as well as your CPA, the tax ramifications, legal ramifications relating to the tax ramifications. There's a lot we didn't cover today that's very on the front end, the key to how you structure your company. So don't go out and forming, LLC or an S corp or an incorporation without consulting your attorneys. And that comes before anything, and your accountants, because there's gonna be different tax ramifications to every little way you set this company up, that only someone who deals in international business on the law side, on the accounting side, can help. And certainly I know that you do deal specifically in these patents and copyrights and IP. But the more general law firms that don't do anything with that, they refer all the business there because it takes a unique expertise to do what Pina does. But on the general law side, you have to be with that attorney as well, first and foremost.
Good point, Dave. Thank you. That was
And in
really
certain
important.
countries, you can't export products into that country unless you're partnered
Yes.
with a
A
local company
local
that's
partner.
registered with a local company of origin in that country.
There are many markets like that. You can get that information from the country commercial guides. That's really easy information to find out. It's a huge document, but you can sort it by sections. Like you can just, what does it take to do business in this particular country? Click on that section and it'll go right to it and it'll talk about local partners. Also disclosure agreements, and what disclosure agreements mean in that country and how they're protected, and then also legal ramifications. But we're not lawyers, and we always will recommend that you take a legal position with an attorney in the country as well. That's one of the things we will recommend.
And in complement to that, it's very important also, I didn't mention this also, but you bring up a good point, Tanya, is that it's hard to know what to do when, and we tried to walk you through a cycle that you should follow, but there's some things you sometimes need to put ahead of everything. For example, if you're choosing another country like Colombia and Panama, and you're gonna know you're going to need to do these financing through XM or SBA. There's country limitation schedules of what countries you can export to and finance. You need to look at that before anything, because if it's not gonna be a country you can do financing in and you don't have the money, maybe you need a financial partner, or maybe you need to think about another country. So I urge you to think about the things, and all this information is out there on the web, it's easy to work and find, but take those diligent measures early in your life cycle of your business, so that you know that you're not gonna get to a point and you're 75% away from the finish line, and all of a sudden you got a major curveball, which means I have no money. That's gonna kill it all.
And another part of your due diligence too, when you're gonna sell products to a foreign country, you need to determine, A, if it's permissible for export from the USA out, and if it's permissible for importation into that foreign country.
Export licensing, there are certain type, and also services. This is something that just came up in education, because like, for example, you might wanna hire an expert to help you with manufacturing, but they may be manufacturing a product or service that presents a national, a risk to national security. And that is under export licensing, which is another whole reporting process, and they're very serious about that. And then the other thing I wanted to mention, we mentioned Colombia and Panama, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention this. We have something called the Clinton list, the OFAC list, and that is a list of people that you should not be doing business with. So you don't want to partner with them, because if you do and they tell you it's okay, you risk to lose your whole company. Okay?
Wow.
Very, say that
But
again.
now,
Say
but
that-
now there is a.
Say that term again.
It's called the OFAC list, OFAC, but we call it the Clinton list. I say Clinton because it came in that administration, so it's something people will remember a lot easier than OFAC.
It's a great point, Tanya.
Right.
We at the banks, we will always cross-reference the OFAC list for every one of our clients. And if there are overseas companies they're doing business with, we do a very detailed study of the vendors they work with or the clients they have overseas to make sure that they're not on these lists, that they don't have any legal, things against them, that they're not in process of being pursued. Yeah, John MacArthur is here, a trade credit expert. He can talk to you all day long about this.
Yeah, OFAC stands for Office of Foreign Asset Controls. It's part of the United States Treasury Department. And basically, it's a list of terrorists, bad guys, drug dealers. And this could be vessels, this could be companies. Take, for example, the country of Zimbabwe, okay? You can sell to the population of Zimbabwe as long as they're not a government employee, okay? And OFAC will fine banks if they finance those transactions. And these fines can be up to $1 million, $2 million. They're steep. On the company level, on your level, they could be, 500,000, they could be $1 million, they could be $2 million, depending on, but you can get export licenses for humanitarian reasons, for food, for medicine, for those types of things to go into some of these OFAC countries. And countries are also on the OFAC list. Iran, North Korea, Cuba. These are countries where the United States government says you can't do business with. But if you're doing humanitarian work, or even food, North Korea is, those people are starving. You don't hear about it, okay? If you're shipping food, you have to get an export license to do it, and it's not the easiest thing to do. You have to hire a law firm to go into the government to get that export license. Before you ship to those countries, because if you ship to those countries, you could be in big trouble.
Well, I just want to clarify for Colombia, please check the list, because this is not about terrorism or necessarily drugs. It could be about money laundering, and it could be 4 generations removed.
Correct.
So there could be people on the list that are 4 generations, you understand, connected. So they may look good on paper. These people are actually operating. They have beautiful shops in shopping malls, You see them in the circles, they're your neighbors. You talk to them, but they're on that list for some reason. And if you're doing business with them, then, you put your assets at risk. And it's not something that you can walk in and speak to an officer in the embassy and they're going to clear it up for you. It's very complicated. So I would say check it right away.
Yeah,
One last question.
Yeah, regarding the export licensing, does it apply to the real material products only, or it also apply to the service like some commodity and some IT product that's a software?
It can be associated with software as well. It really depends. There are lists, again, I'm going to refer you to the export.gov, and you can click on export licensing. In some cases, they have categories already there, but they also have a 1-800 number that you can call, and you can discuss your particular product or service. So it's very complicated. It's very interesting because I mentioned the educational thing. I wouldn't have thought about that. but it's something that has just recently come up where, you know, you're bringing people in and they're working like in a lab, like Brookhaven Lab, and they're coming up with some innovative technology, and there are a lot of very sophisticated technologies there. They are required to put an export license on the people who work on that particular technology, because that is a potential risk to national security. And this is a technology that has to do with security tracking system. You see what I'm saying? And it's a software-related system. It has some mechanics with it also. So it's new, and the export licensing is on the equipment, on the software, but also on certain people who are not U.S. citizens who are actually helping to develop the software. Okay?
Is there any consulting service regarding this export licensing?
Consulting service, you mean someone to help you?
Someone can help us if I have any issue or question regarding this.
I would first start with, but what I would start with first is that export.gov, and then the information number that's on there. I would start there first, but there are also law firms that specialize in export licensing. But again, don't you kind of want to know when you go to the store what kind of ingredients you need for a cake before you go and want to bake a cake? I mean, do some homework first before you reach out to the law firm, so you know that you're asking the right questions and you're not paying to ask those questions. I think you even recommended that there's certain things they can do in the patent process. So I always recommend to my clients, you know, it's not so complicated. I mean, I know you go on export.gov, it's a lot of information, but you can just go in the search and put in export licensing, and all kinds of things will pop up. Send me an email. I'll find someone in Department of Commerce that you can connect with that will talk to you about export licensing.
All right, great.
I just want to make a comment. I'd like you all to walk away here feeling positive. I see a lot of faces that look like, terror. You know, we have these stress balls out there, they're globes. Please take them with you. I know you're going to get stressed through this process and use it.
Please don't throw them at each other.
You have the globe in your hand. We have the internet. There's so much information out there. There's so many free resources available to you. You know, just don't be afraid. Be tenacious about your process. Use your tools. Do some free diligence, and then you'll figure out what you need and get the support you need, and you'll be able to do this. I know that you can.
Going in the jungle.
But let me just tell you, so I just came in from Tunisia, and I've maybe been here 3 months, and actually I think you referred the person, or someone here, they came from one of the Small Business Development Center, and it was a young girl who was in the sporting industry, which was really interesting.
Competition.
Yeah.
It was running.
And she called me, and she said, I just heard that there was a free trade agreement signed, and I have some relatives in Colombia, and I go, oh God, here we go, I have a friend in Colombia, and I want to export to Colombia. And so I said, well, what do you want to export? And she talked about the sporting goods material, and so I asked her, how long has she been working in that industry? And she says, well, it's a family business, we've been doing it for a while, maybe 5, 6, or 7 years. And she said, but my cousin, and I go, okay. And she goes, he has a store in Colombia, and he has stores in different cities within Colombia. And so I said, okay, I don't usually give this kind of information because it doesn't seem like you're really necessarily ready to export, but why not? Okay, so I did the whole counseling thing with her, and I said, all right, you know, these are the kind of things you need to be aware of. You don't necessarily need a partner because you have your cousin right there, but you pretty much better make sure your cousin's not on the old back list, and you know, we went through this whole thing. 2 months later, she called me back and she said, I just quit my job because I started my business and this is growing crazy. It's out of control. So there is a situation where some people just dig in, they use the expertise, and it happens. And she was looking for like a freight forwarder. How was she going to try to, you know, move this? First she started off just shipping it through the U.S. Postal Service. And then she said, okay, this is growing, it's getting too big, you know, we tapped into 5 stores in Colombia, you know, what can we do next? So, you know, she should be coming probably to see you pretty soon because of cash flow, financing problems. So that's the good story. That's the positive thing. Don't let it overwhelm you. You know, you just got to do it.
How great are these speakers? Come on, let me hear it. I cannot believe it, and I learned so much today. Every time we think we know what we're doing, we have one of these and we learn a little more.